Hey guys, Jacob Howard here, and today we're going to look at the camera settings and whether or not you should use normal or Cine-like D color profile for your FPV footage. So we're going to go into camera settings, we're going to go down to advanced camera settings, and then right down here on color, we're going to click into here and we can go normal or D Cine-like. So I'm going to show two different versions, and then we're going to jump into the editing room and see which one's better for beginners to edit and which ones you can get actually better footage with. So I'm going to fly a little bit in normal, do the same move, and then fly a little bit in D Cine-like so that you guys can see the difference in how to actually work with this kind of footage, and then you guys can make the choice for yourself. So let's record the footage and jump over to the editing room so I can show you guys how that looks. Okay guys, now we're in the editing room and we have the normal clip over here on the right and the Cine-like clip here on the left. You can see obviously right off the bat, saturation is massively different. This is all the same kind of color area, and this one's a lot more saturated, green, red, orange, all that, whereas this is a lot more dull. The other big thing that's good reason to use the Cine-like is you get more definition in these shadows. Like you can see a lot more in these shadows. They're not near as harsh, but over here they're very, very harsh. So you're not going to get as much detail out of the rocks and stuff like that. If we scrub through this just a little bit more, pay attention to like how the shadows right here on these rocks are really harsh, and that you're not going to get a lot of detail out of those. But then when we come over here, we can see, look how much more detail we can get in the Cine-like over here than we can on normal. So obviously it looking like Cine-like is going to give you a lot more information, so it's going to be better to use, right? Well, not necessarily. For most of the time, you're going to color grade your Cine-like very, very similar to what the normal's already color grading at. Cine-like's usually used by professionals who are very good at color grading and can use Cine-like to its full capacity. If you just want to get some cool YouTube videos out and you're not super worried about like getting really professional footage out there that they're going to pick apart pixel by pixel, then normal's going to be just fine for you, and it's going to probably end up saving you some time, because a lot of the things you're going to be doing already, it does here in normal. So like I'm going to bump up the saturation on the Cine-like in order for it to look a little bit more realistic, and the normal's already done that for me. So really the normal's going to save you time right away. But in this case, we're going to look real quick at the color grading and how the process works for both of these, and how you can use Cine-like better for color grading, and how the process can actually be a lot easier for normal, and how you would use that. So I've jumped into the color tab. I am on the Cine-like version, and we're going to do just a few changes here so we can see like how they interact with each other, and how color grading in Cine-like gives you more options than coloring in the normal mode. So first thing, I do color grading as part of my job for video and stuff like that, but I am not, I'm not a colorist for a job. I know people who literally that's the only job they do. They do it for TV shows and stuff like that. They could spend hours on a clip. So that's not really needed for most people who are doing these jobs. So I'm going to show just some basic stuff on how to color grade and why you should choose Cine-like or normal. So this is not an in-depth coloring tutorial, but we are going to look at a few things. So first thing I want to do is get to a clip that's a little bit more inclusive of all the area. So right about here is pretty good because I can still see the sky, I can see these mountains here, but I can also color grade for these rocks as well as the grass. So this is a pretty good place to stop, and I still have a good reference point on the other side here on how this was color graded. So first thing I'm going to do is make sure my white balance is correct. It is looking pretty good here. Like this white right here and this white right here look pretty white. They might be a little bit blue, so I'm going to test it out. And I'm going to turn up the temperature a little bit. And I think that looks a little bit better. I turned up the temperature just a little bit, so this looks a little bit more white, less blue. So I turned a little bit more orange. And that's part of color grading too, is you're going to have to do a little bit of trial and error to kind of see how it looks. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to scrub through the clip for highlights. I want to see if my highlights are blown out. Everything looks pretty good. I'm not seeing any crazy highlights being exposed. Right here it's a little bit overexposed, so I'm going to go into highlights here and I'm going to bring it down a little, and you can see that gives just a little bit more definition between the shadows and the highlights, so a little bit more contrast. I'm going to scrub back a little bit, make sure that didn't like ruin our whole clip or anything. It's a little bit much, so instead of -21 I'm going to do about -10, so that'll just help a little bit with that. So shadows, you can see if I drag this all the way over, it actually really brings out the shadows, but they're very, very noisy. So if I hit play, you can see how noisy those shadows are. So I wouldn't obviously recommend doing that. I'm going to leave that at 0 because I think it's pretty well contrasted with what we already got. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to bring up my saturation a little bit to about 70. And then I'm actually going to come over here to custom, do Lume versus Sat. And I'm going to make sure my shadows don't have a whole bunch of color in their shadows. So I'm going to just make this little line here and kind of cut out this dark area as saturation so that my dark shadows don't have color. You don't want these being tinted with color. Now I can also go into hue versus sat and I can look at the different colors that are saturated. We can see blue is pretty saturated. I'm going to actually bring that down a little bit because I want to focus on the cool colors of the rock. So then I'm going to come over here and I'm going to boost up our orange and red just a little bit because I want that to shine a little bit more and have a little bit better contrast. Now you can see if I click up here, that was the old version. This is the new version so far. So now that I've done some adjustments in the reds and oranges, I'm actually going to bring this temperature back down because now it's a little bit too orange. Right about there, I would say, is going to look pretty good. Once again, I'm going to scrub through the footage a little bit because I want to make sure everything looks good the whole way. So as I come over this rock here, this whole image and everything is looking pretty good. I like the look of it. It's not oversaturated. This is just a little bit oversaturated and has a slightly different tint. You can especially see that like up here, it's a way more orange, kind of purplish. Whereas over here, it's a lot cleaner. You got your nice greens and the oranges and they all stay separated. And then here into custom, I'm going to make a very small S-curve to help with some of that contrast. Okay. So once again, I'm going to turn this off. That's the old version. This is the new version. Obviously, the new version looks a lot better, a lot more realistic. So what I'm going to do actually real quick is show you guys what it looks like covering the entire screen. Okay, so this is what it looks like without any of the color grading. Just going to kind of scrub through it real quick. Going to give you guys an idea. So like we discussed before, pretty bland, not all that cool. But with a little bit of color grading, it's looking a lot nicer. Now, once I've watched the video through, I can notice like up here, my shadows actually are getting pretty crushed up here. So I am going to bring out my shadows just a little bit. And some of the reason that happened is because we changed this S-curve, which will change your shadows. I can also tell it is just a little bit oversaturated on those oranges. So I'm going to come into here and I'm just going to turn it down. I'm going to turn it down right over here and a little bit here. And that looks a little bit better than it did earlier. So that's it once again without anything. And this is with the color grade. So as you can tell, a really big difference between the two. Once again, without and with. So this looks really good. I really like how this turned out. The CineLike definitely gives you a lot more options for your shadow and color grading. Now let's jump over to the normal and see like, does it look just as good in the end to what you're going to get when you actually put in the effort for the CineLike. Okay, so this is the normal shot. This is without any color grading. This is just what I came out with. So first thing I obviously want to do is bring up my shadows a little bit. I'm going to go back into this hue versus saturation. I'm going to kind of do the same thing. Turn down the blue a little bit and turn up my red and orange a little bit. Bring a little more saturation to that. Go into Lume versus saturation. Turn that down. Make sure our shadows are black. Go into custom. And I don't think I really need to give this guy an S-curve because it's already got some really good definition between the two. A little bit high on the highlights here, so I'm going to bring that down a little. And temperature looks pretty good, pretty decent. So yeah, so I'm going to play the two clips back to back. And then afterwards, I'll tell you guys which one was normal and which one was the CineLike with the color grade. So, and if you guys can't tell a difference, then great. You can go out there, shoot in normal, save yourself some time in the color grading. So, but if you're really going for professional shots and you really want to color grade as much as you can, then you're going to want to film in CineLike. So in the end, normal's for people who want to get out there, get the shot, and be able to send it out, put it on YouTube, whatever. CineLike is going to give you a little bit more room to color grade and get more professional shots, but it's going to take more time and more experience. I showed you a very, very small part of color grading, like literally barely even a percentage. So there's a ton to learn. That's why these cameras are getting better and better at kind of doing it for you a little bit. So this is probably going to be better for most people. Here's the clips back to back, and at the end, I'll show you guys which one was normal and which one was the CineLike with the color grade. So if you guys have any questions about that, definitely let me know and have fun flying.